Okay, we are back with the finale of the spreadsheet videos. In a couple days, I've been busy, so let's break down the finale and the overall results and discussion. As mentioned before, there were 551 total animal species mentioned in the 27 articles studied. Out of that number, there was a total of 165 different animal species, and out of those, there was only 70 unique animal species with only one mention across all of the articles. That gives a percentage of 42% of unique animal mentions that were only mentioned once, and a total of 58% that were repeated at least twice across all of the articles. Additionally, mammals were way overrepresented, and I think birds were way underrepresented, with a total of birds being presented in 7% of the articles, followed by reptiles and amphibians in 9% of appearances across the articles. Fish made up 12% of the appearances. Invertebrates, so anything without bones, that includes insects, mollusks, and other arthropods, as well as worms, and things like octopi, squid, snails, all of that. And finally, mammals made up a staggering 53%, which is over half of the mentions, which does make sense, all around, because humans are mammals, as somebody in my comments so kindly pointed out, and are typically considered to be cuter and more interesting and charismatic than many other animal species. So it does make sense why animals were so overrepresented, despite not being actually that representative of all animal species. Now going into our top 5 overall appearances, starting from the bottom up. In 5th place, we actually have a 4-way tie between the saiga antelope, the Patagonia mara, the naked mole rat, and the Irrawaddy dolphin, all with 10 appearances each. In 4th, we actually have a 5-way tie between the star-nosed mole, the eye, the blue dragon sea slug, the only invertebrate to crack the top 5, the goblin shark, and the red-lipped batfish. Now, these two fish are the only fish that also cracked the top 5, and they all each had 10 appearances across all 27 articles. In 3rd, we had the Gerenuk with 13 appearances. In 2nd, the Colugo with 14 appearances. And our number 1 top appearing animal, the pink fairy armadillo. Now, this one did surprise me a bit. I didn't think it was going to be that popular and that highly represented across everything, but good for it, because it's a very cool animal, it's very cute, and people do need to appreciate it more. Now, as you can see, birds and reptiles and amphibians were not represented at all in the top 5. The top placing bird was the shoebill with 6 appearances, and the top placing reptile or amphibian was the Indian purple frog with 7. However, neither of them quite reached the numbers that cracked the top 5 mentions. Now, altogether, out of the top mentioned animals, all of the ones that I just showed, in the top 5, not including the shoebill and the frog, they made up 137 mentions out of the 551 total mentions, which is 25% or 1/4 of all of the appearances. So the top 5 different animal species, which was actually only 12 animal species out of the total, 12 out of the 165 total different species mentioned, so made up 1/4 of the entire population themselves with all of these mentions. So what is kind of the takeaway from this? First of all, it is great that all of these interesting and lesser known animal species are getting the recognition that they deserve. However, I do think that most of these articles are just ping-ponging their references off of each other. There were definitely a couple articles where I saw pretty much the exact same list in just slightly different order, maybe with slightly different animals, but there were definitely some that had almost the exact same lists. So what I think was happening with at least some of these articles, people wanted to write their own article, so they searched up animals you've never heard of before and took inspiration off of that, which leads to a feedback loop of the same 12 or so animals being repeated so often in these articles, so much so that other animals such as the birds become highly underrepresented. I'm not saying that this is totally a bad thing, like it's great that these more popular animals in these articles are getting representation, like the pink fairy armadillo and the colugo. However, with people kind of, again, just ping-ponging off of each other in these articles, it tends to create a feedback loop where many other very interesting and unknown animals are not getting any space to be talked about. And while it is bringing attention to these other ones, it's doing so in a way that makes it a little bit redundant. After a while, you keep getting the same information, give or take a few individual animal species. So maybe takeaway from this, if you're going to write an article about cool animal species that you've never heard of, maybe make sure that you're not pinging around with these same 12 or so animal species that at this point I'm sure most people have already heard of. Find some new ones. Go scroll through Wikipedia for like however long, you will find some very interesting things.